Hello everyone. Today I'm bringing with another new guest from Algeria. He is Mr. Fatah, and hopefully it will be very interesting because of in the present pandemic situation we have many global challenges, and he is very experienced in global business like executions, and he has experience of doing work in Europe and in Africa and many continents. So we're going to try to figure out some of the solution for business in this pandemic situation, how we can move together in a global market, how we can make a meaningful contribution in the business arena, and how we can make our business more effective and we can recover from this present challenging situation. So thank you, Mr. Fatah, to join with us. So
Thank
how
you
are
very
you?
much.
How are you?
Thank you very much, Sharif. I'm very happy to be here and be of some help and share some insights about the global market. Okay, the topic in itself is very large. So what I decided to do is divide my talk in two. One part is going to be very boring for you, but there are very important things about the global market that you probably don't know. So that's what I decided to do as the first part, to give you some new insights, some new ideas of what's going on. Some might sound very funny to you as a viewer or sharing with Mr. Sharif, and some of these views are very serious and very real. They're happening in Europe, in other continents, very big decisions on large sectors that span over continents. Because now we have this outbreak, and that's it. Everything is coming into the front stage of economies. Everything that was wrong with the world is coming up front. I think many people know that now. So the second part is gonna be maybe more interesting because I'm gonna talk about these experiences that you mentioned that they had on the local markets, and we try to look at different interesting ideas. One of the main themes will be, if you're local and you want to go global.
Before you go to the topic, can you please introduce yourself, your experience, where you from, how you work, some of the if you share about you with our audience, then they can understand your background and they can ask you question as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Basically, I'm mid-aged, so I'm not gonna mention my exact age. I'm over 30. I studied BA in marketing at first in England and global business management. Then I was off on my own on the market there, and I realized how difficult it was there in Europe to actually do anything, find a job or start your own business. So I was in circumstances where I had to leave. So I'm basically French. I'm also Turkish and Algerian.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. So you have a global market concept, and you have experience from Europe as well as from Africa. So actually, how you want to analyze the European market as well as we know that it's a developed market. On the other hand, the African markets, how you want to analyze for global business perspective. Yes.
Thank you very much, Sharif. Okay, before we start that, I want to try something funny with you and the audience. So I took some numbers, okay, about January 2020. What were the products that sold most on Amazon while everyone was hiding and panicking about COVID, okay? So I know a lot of people don't think about these things, but I think about it, and I'm sharing it with you now. Just quickly before we start. So January 2020, Amazon sales by revenue, I mean globally, poker cards, such a stupid product. And you can have your own brand easily, $61 million. This is in January 2020. Doll toys for girls, $173 million. There was a kid book, there was even a kid book that was called Dogman. It's not something really special, you know. That sold for $283 million on Amazon. Adjustable wristbands for sports, $390 million. Exercise bands, stretchy plastic, you know, just simple stretchy plastic for people to exercise. You know, the one that you pull to exercise. Well, that made $275 million. What everyone was, you know, Okay, I understand there is an emergency with the COVID outbreak, but some people did work on Amazon and were making millions of money out of a small products that wouldn't cost them a lot, where you could easily create your own brand. Leggings for women, 300 million. Yoga mats, 400 million. Out pocket yoga pants, 800 million. You see, one guy decided to put pockets out of the yoga pant and he made the double. Yoga pants were 400 millions and that guy made 800 millions, the double. Can you imagine? So men's socks, which sounds also a bit silly, $500 million. Pillows that are well designed but not like therapeutic, $500 million. Cotton swabs that you use on your ears, $600 million. And that's it. That's it for the list that I wanted to show you and the audience, to give you an idea how active people are while you're sitting at home locally. And we know that everything is becoming online and will become more online. There are high techs that are appearing more and more. For example, artificial intelligence will be more and more integrated for managing sales for people and all sorts of things. So things are moving very fast. I think the audience should understand that things are moving very fast. And the solutions that you think are local about opening your business and making transaction with the people in other countries might be too slow for you now. So let's come back to what you were saying, actually. The global economy, okay? So I want to talk first about global markets in the era of COVID, and the idea of business conversion. It's a word that I invented myself to a simple, like term. So what it is about, I chose to talk to you about the European Union because it's one of the major economic powers. And maybe some of our viewers are from the European Union, some like you are in Asia, but everyone is sort of included in big business spheres locally. These spheres usually take care of the large businesses, internet broadband, construction, what else? Energy, all these businesses are very much already owned consumer products. So many sectors are challenged into bankruptcy right now. Many businesses in local economies, whether it's in the US, you're in the US, or in Africa or in Europe, don't worry, you're not the only one. Everyone is facing the same problem. What is the problem with that? COVID has highlighted the worst in global relationships. That's what's happening. So many people don't admit it or don't have access to these large global spheres. So they cannot really see what's happening in terms of profit and market growth in Africa or US. They're kind of isolated. You feel isolated. You have your own local brands, but you do feel isolated. Why? That's one of the methods that global brands use to make you stay as far as possible from the markets they want. And because COVID is changing everything, these global companies are going to do just this, and make their best so that if you're a medium business now, like yourself, Sharif, or anyone in the audience, or anyone who's interested in doing business globally, you can count on these big businesses to actually hinder you, to stop you, from entering this market. And why would they do that? The main reason why is because they know that if you as medium businesses manage to make it to markets like Africa or Latin America and develop your own brand, you're gonna make money much faster than in Europe, US, or some Asian countries that have a development index that's high. That's the main reason, one of the main reasons at least. So the COVID-19 crisis has also made us aware of the vulnerabilities created by the free market as well. The overdependence on global supply chains and the just-in-time production was painfully illustrated by the major shortages of strategic stocks of medical equipment. And I think everyone is well informed on that. I don't need to cover that a lot, So In regards to the European Union, they made already plans of partnership of equals. That's what they call it, partnership of equals. So I want to really stress this for you as a member of the audience and you, Sharif. Partnerships of equals will be the future for business globally. Like, people have to forget about the lack of trust and the stereotypes they have from one region to the other and go out there and do the business. It cannot work anymore, you know? Everyone knows that third world countries have problems with corruption, transparency, and everything. But if you keep repeating that to yourself, nothing is going to happen. So even for the European Union, which was not a problem in the past, they're in a position now with COVID where they have to collaborate. And if you watch the news, they're fighting with each other, basically. They're angry at each other because it's a European Union, but they don't really collaborate with each other, honestly, you know? They don't help each other, honestly. If you look at Italy, for example, they were more compliant and working with the US and Europe. But once there was a break in Europe, the political break is important. Who helped them? Who was the major source that helped them to get the equipment? It was more, I think, China and a bit of Russia sending virologists, for example. Isn't that correct, Cherry?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, because these major alliances are aiming at developing African market, Latin American market, and Southeast Asia markets more towards a partnership of equals mindset, all these new generation of businesses should look at that carefully and choose ideas, select a region, you know, make the research about the region, understand what are how people work there, because how people work in different regions can be very different. So for the EU, for example, its closer geographical neighbor is Africa, so that's why everything will be focused on that. So if you're in Europe now, my advice to you is, if you want to go global, do it, because it's good. If you stay in your market right now, and on top of that, there is a COVID crisis that could go over to the next year, and you have a business, you better try to convert your product or find a business partner there that can convert your business into a new product, and travel to other markets to continue to have a good business, you know?
Okay, I have a specific questions in that present situations. What's the present condition in Africa, even if in the example in Algeria, in COVID-19 situations, how they're managing these COVID-19 situations? What's the condition? How many people actually affected by the COVID-19? How you want to analyze this situation?
Okay, the way it appeared here is a bit less severe than Europe, because we are not big travelers, obviously, because the level of income is different than Europe. So people travel less to Asia or like Italy or France. But we do have a large migration in France, so that's how the problem started here. So what they did is they basically had, obviously, a lack of equipment for this kind of things. They're not, we're not in developed countries for that. But we had, luckily, less cases. So what they did is they put confinements that were partial, allowing businesses to open up to 3 p.m., something like that, and then they extended it to 8 p.m. And then they isolated the cities that had the biggest numbers of cases of COVID. So people couldn't go out of these cities; they could just go move inside. They made a lot of information, you know, like broadcasting and sharing, you know, the usual one, you know, like the ones you see in other countries about the masks and everything. And I think the way we managed it is not due to the infrastructure that put in place, which is very weak. I would say it's very weak, you know. People are kind of abandoned, so there are not enough places where they share the number of COVID patients. So you might go to the hospital for a normal flu and actually get the COVID by going there, you know. So there is so that's what's happening, and does that answer to your question, Sharif?
Yes, definitely. Beside that, what is the overall? Do you have, as you are a global entrepreneur, do you have idea about the African market? I know that African market is very big, but what's the condition of African market? Like, What's the situation in Morocco, or example in Egypt, or this kind of country? What's your sorry? So what's your experience? How you want to share the African present condition?
Okay, thank you very much for your question, Sharif, and I'll answer to it right now. I will share my own experience so you can understand how easy and how hard for certain things it is to get to Africa, okay? So when I came here in 2015, I met a friend that was half Russian and half Algerian. He was on holiday here, so he brought some Chinese businessman. So we were drunk actually when we met, and he said, "Hey, you speak English, so that's the first thing you need. You need to speak few languages or have a team that speaks languages to actually be able to cope with people here. So if you speak French, English, or French or English or Arabic, you're fine. Or if you have someone, that's one of the first requirements, because people are very direct here. It's less based on emails and all sorts of things to start or conduct business. That's the first point, communication. Second point, so we came here, and I'll tell you my story and you'll understand. The guy shakes my hand while we're drunk, and we decide to start his business. He wanted to export large quantities of plastic in Algeria, and the market was good. So I said, okay, let's do it. I'm up for it. And like the other guy, the Algerian Russian guy, was supposed to have this role, but he actually betrayed him in life. So this is a point I want to tell you about. If you do business in these countries, a lot of things are unpredictable, because the markets are booming. The business is happening faster than in any other places. A lot of things change on the way. You have to stay focused on your objectives, whether you want to sell or install a logistic infrastructure. So what we did was simply buy a company car. We went to some contact. So it's important to have networking contacts if you have from your country, or people you actually meet by doing some field work from going around. Apart from that, it's not that hard. You can even start with the touristic visa. I wanted to come back to this in the second part to show you that it's always easy it's not easy to find the financials if you're in developed countries, or a partner that's willing to accept to work with you to go to these African markets. But that's one of the major obstacles you have. Apart from that, I think a lot of people misunderstand that it's much easier than you think to make business in Africa or Latin America, okay? So we bought a company car. We asked the help of another Chinese businessman who already had some warehousing operations in Algeria, dealing with plastic from China that he was importing. We just came into his parking and he said, "Here are 3 cars, choose them." I chose one, okay? We bought it after 5 minutes. It's something, for example, that you cannot do with Europeans or Americans, But I'm telling it to you now, you can do it. If you have the money, you can do it. And then with the car and our own persons, we went and prospected the market. We met some of the suppliers in the business, and we made a list. And you have to make a lot of meetings because people prefer to see you face to face. You come from another country, they don't know who you are, and there is an important point to make here. It's always great to have a great brand, a clear product, and be transparent with Africans. Because you might think that, okay, these less developed countries, people are, there's corruption and people do things not always in the legal way, right? But if you want to move on to a new business way in new markets after COVID-19, take advantage of the business conversion that's happening and people getting interested in these markets, and be transparent. Present a brand that's nice, like we did 3 years ago. So that's what we did, and it worked. We actually we didn't even spend anything, just rented a flat, had a company car and ourselves, and we went from 0 to $1 million in 8 months. Just to give you an example. And let me give you another example in Europe. For example, there is a brand that tried to open a lot of shops selling accessories for gifts and for birthdays and everything. And when they looked at the costs, I'm giving you a business case study in France just to compare, okay? It takes $1 million to open a shop that's 300 square meter in France, and all sorts of paperwork to comply with, to actually just have the shop, the surface area, and put what's inside of it. $1 million. Like, in African markets, you don't even need that. You don't even need more than, for example, $50,000 to start a business, as long as you have the source, of course, in your country. And from those $50,000, you can go up to $1 million very easily on an African market. So I hope I answered the question, but I can explain more things. So for legal aspects and policing, of course, you have to deal with administrations that are local. You have to think about your rights in terms of importing your design ideas or concepts or anything, or products. It's not that complicated. They're quite easy to reach. But the most important thing to say about these markets is be there. Don't sit in front of your laptop if you're a businessman in developed countries, and don't think that it's complicated. If you just have enough budgeting, or you can make a loan, for example. For example, there is we can talk about a company called Payability. I'm not sure if you know about it. It's an online bank that adapted to the COVID-19 situation. And what they did is they're proposing basically global international loans, or regional loans to businessmen to start business, but it's all online. That's, for example, a solution you can use. And then while you do that, if you get into these markets, make sure you're more informed than the people you talk to, the one you meet on spot. People will listen to you. They will be sensitive to price, more to quality. Of course, it's not like the high-end markets that you would meet in other places of the world. What can I say? Yeah, you can start like this. And many people I know, by experience, and I can vouch for you for it now in front of everyone, most of the people I know that actually made that step to figure out a business plan to go to Africa went from being like conceptual, businessmen, to actually factory owners. I know 3 or 4 people that did that in just 2 years, 1 year even. Have their own operation, factory from Algeria, and then they're even thinking about distributing to countries like Mali, like other African countries. So
I just want to know specific issues. Let's say in COVID-19 situation, some of the African, they are trying to solve these challenges in proper way. Some of them still struggling with these things. So if COVID is not controlled properly, how your business concept or business strategy will be implemented in Africa? Because example, let's say in Europe, already their economies and everything goes stuck, or other developed nations, they cannot come to Africa, they cannot come to Asia. Many challenges, many countries go shutdowns, economy go shutdowns, and many challenges happening. But issue is that, like example, in challenging situation, if COVID situation not improve, if developing nations, their economic condition also is struggling, as well as their healthcare system cannot adapt with the present situations, how developed nations organizations, they do focus on these developing nations for doing business, how you can create trust on them, because trust is very important for global business. And another thing, sir, if we can see your face transparently, then our audience can ask you many questions. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for asking this question, because it's a very important one. So what I'm going to say about these markets, Sharif, is that, a lot of them, as we started the conversation, are collapsing because they relied on oil and commodity prices. So they will have a devastating impact on several countries in Africa and Latin America and some Asian countries at some point. So because it's half of their export, you see. So to implement a business strategy in these markets, for example, we can take the example of solar panels. Okay. I want to take the case study of solar panels to give you the potential of it, whether if you can do it or not. Like what's happening right now is an opportunity for everyone actually to convert to these markets, because they're now more friendly to actually listen to your project. That's first of all. They're more friendly, and they can listen to you from distance as well, and you propose them things to actually implement yourself. As a small niche market company for high tech, and I wouldn't recommend, for example, like fiber optics or internet broadband. Those are businesses that usually the governments take care of here. But if you look at the ambition of the EU here, they try to imitate China, but they emphasize investments in extractive industries and infrastructure in Africa, you know. So this has increased the depth of these countries. So now what they're thinking about is that they're more friendly to people like us, for example, that want to propose other things, because that's what the future is going into these markets. The post-pandemic economic recovery is an opportune moment to shift the emphasis to investing primarily and diversifying and supporting sustainable African domestic economies. That's all. That's where all the action will happen. If you don't take that chance, the global brands will take it. They're already working on it. Just keep it that in mind. But it doesn't mean that you cannot do it. You can, and you can try to root it in green technologies or local value chains. Okay, those are the two things that that will have a lot of future in this decade. The main businesses that will make a lot of money. I'm talking about hundreds of billions of dollars if you're talking in a business way, but also very interesting things. You can do positive growth. You know, you can give jobs to employees and pay them better in Africa and exchange knowledge, you know. So you should.
One thing, business strategy wise, we know this is important, but I am discussing on the present pandemic situation. Can you define and analyze how this present pandemic situation, because healthcare is number one issue. You are talking about sustainability. Sustainability is another important issue right now in the business context. My objective is that I want to know more. I want to know or understand more about the African economy based on the sustainability. Like example, how actually sustainability is measured. But we know like African economy is cheap. African economy we can get enter easily. If you have a dynamic people like you, we can do better business. But my objective is that how you can give solution in present challenging situation. We do not in present situation, what's the benefit, how it will work, how we can understand this situation actually.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. So I will say two words. First, in the past, people used to think in terms of ownership, but now you have to do partnership, not ownership, if you want to work in Africa or Latin America to produce chocolate or whatever you want, because I worked on all these case studies and projects. So the continent needs a network of logistic infrastructure to drive intracontinental trade. That's very important. If you have a business solution to give, you can be a service provider that advises or manages infrastructure of logistics of goods in the regions of Africa. You can mount a company like that very easily, have few employees that are specialized that you bring with you or that you later hire there, and have a small office and start from there, for example, for the infrastructure, because that's one of the major networks that's missing among African countries. Consumers also suffer, you know, because right now, moving a box from Africa, for example, from an African port to a city in a country that's next to it, costs 5 times as much as in Europe, you know, or China. So that's one of the businesses you can think about that can be done online, as organized as a platform first, and then you take care of packaging, you know, for example. That's something that you can do with your government, or find like a think tank, or find to finance yourself, convince them that you can do that in Africa, and I can assure you it will work very well. If you're there first, it's going to grow, and you're going to be one of the market leaders very soon. So tackling corruption, governance, and security of contracts is one major thing that that could boost the trade. You know, so that's more the government side, the policy side, but you have to keep it in mind as a businessman. So if you look at a quick glance of the flows of global trade in Africa, what's missing out is that it's a continent that has significant natural resources that you can source locally and send to other countries. For example, in Morocco, they export a lot of the fish in Europe. You know, maybe you don't know about it, but a lot of the fish in Europe is cheap because it comes from Morocco. And small companies do that, you know. A lot of small companies do that. Tomato from Morocco is feeding France. It costs €1 for a French customer, but it's Moroccan. But if you buy it in France, it's going to cost €2. Nobody can even afford a tomato, you know. So all of these are very different businesses. Tomatoes, you know, there are some areas in Africa where you can get 10 acres of land and rent them for $200. Did you know that? Just $200. Do you know how insanely cheap it can be in some areas? The reason why it's like this is because it's in the countryside, of course. It's isolated. You have to bring in your know-how, your team to actually manage. Don't count on the locals, because the poor locals, they had to deal with a very complicated colonialism, you know, era, and then they had to deal with post-colonialism, which is global brands taking all the markets and selling them what they want, and not really creating jobs, you know, not really creating jobs. So the worries about corruption, governance, and security of contracts are starting to fade right now with COVID, because they don't have a choice. They can't sell oil anymore. They cannot rely on the oil economy anymore. So this is one of the most important periods if you really want to make your impact in Africa and other countries that are similar. Continents that are similar. So for solar, let's take the case study of solar, so you can understand how to implement a high-tech product that's sustainable for the long term for your business. Okay, so I've tried myself just for fun and to see if it works in Morocco. So why did I choose Morocco? Because Morocco has good relationships with both Chinese and US. And Chinese and US are the main sources of technology in the solar business. They're the main players, if you want. The ones that can easily get you what you want so that you can open your business locally. So the problem I noticed, it's that legally speaking, what's happening with solar panels is like the growth in Africa, for example, will be slower than people might expect in general, with the government changing the policies that actually allow you as a private businessman to install, for example, solar panels. So why it's hard for you to actually install them is that you need the local teams to do it at a high quality. And then you need the authorizations. Every time you install panels, you need authorizations. Why this idea is good, I'm going to explain now in further detail, okay? So first you need to understand the business, the solar business in Africa. So it's kind of the Achilles heel of Africa, it's economic potential, okay? So we can give a parallel example that's growing right now in Africa, which is the nuclear power. You will think that Africa has nothing to do with nuclear power, for example, but of the 30 countries identified by the International Atomic Energy Agency, the AIEA, that are interested in nuclear power programs, 1/3 are African. 1/3 of 10 countries out of 30 countries are interested in nuclear power very seriously in the future. I'm just giving you parallel suggestions so you can use your mind to have more a broader perspective about high technology, energy. So let's move on to the solar panel. Okay, according to Bloomberg, for example, they're saying that the sub-Saharan solar mini grid market, mini grid, which is more for consumers than for large facilities, can be worth 128 billion by 2030. So I think that says it all, you know. It's a very big number, and it's from my experience, it's going to be higher, I think. The only problem is policing. That's it. As soon as the governments decide to ease the policing for private businesses to install mini grids, this market is going to explode. And the good thing about it, for example, is that you can develop long-term relationships. Because if you sell them to farmers, for example, they can save a lot of money. A large farm can save up to $500,000 over a year using these solar panels. You know, they need maintenance too. So the maintenance you have to provide it as a service. So if we think about this business idea, so if that service has to be, sorry, I have to open the door for some people. I'm really sorry. I'm going to be back.
Dear audience, my friend actually, he is from Algeria, and most importantly, he is trying to give the solutions from the African point of views. And yes, now you look good. I think if you talk in from these positions, our audience can understand you more, and
okay,
they can.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good. So okay, sorry, I understand you are very tall. So okay, let's focus on your solution on solar panel. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's imagine a project now. Okay. So what did we talk about? We talked about policing. The policing will become easier. What kind of budget do you need? I don't think you need more than about $50,000 to actually start a small operation where you actually source your own solar panels. So sourcing is very important in global markets. Okay. So let me explain something to you, and you will understand that the word is not as it looks to you. Okay. Because some people are working to hide it from you. So this is a perfect example. The solar panel example is perfect. Okay, so let's talk about this. Where does China stand in global solar industry? Okay, because China is one of our topics. So why not every product from China is going to be cheaper than a domestic one that you buy in the US or Europe or other Asian countries in Southeast Asia? Chinese solar brands are generally, they can offer more competitive prices. You will understand why I'm telling you this exactly, okay? So there is also the availability, you know? In logistics and going global and import export, if the availability of a certain product like solar panels is not well tuned and working very well in the right delays, you're gonna have a lot of problems. So China can provide for solar panels, for example, for this business idea. You should look at China, okay? Another reason you should look at Chinese is because of the way they do business, and we talked about it. Chinese are much more direct. If they see that you have a market and you're going to make money, you're going to talk with the boss straight away. And that's very different, and that's what the Europeans and Americans are not doing very well. In fact, sometimes it's almost insulting. You know, when I worked in France with a company that was providing the African market with the construction spare parts, I had to look at basically 300 suppliers or so, basically all the suppliers of spare parts for trucks, you know, machines that are used for construction. And even with the company official name and email, they wouldn't even talk to you, you know, because they just don't know you. They don't want to talk to you. They don't contact you. They don't want to hear about you. And the same goes for America. They just leave you to the receptionist, even if you're proposing a deal for $100,000 to $200,000, and you're very serious about it. That's what the Europeans and Americans are not doing well yet. And Southeast Asia, I'm not sure about the involvement in or India in Africa. It's quite new, but I'm sure some companies are already starting to be here, you know. So the Chinese can do that for you. You can have an easier way to work directly with the factory and find your source that has actually the competitive prices that allow you to buy your product and produce it at a larger scale later. So is sourcing high tech from China a good idea? In short, yes. It's just that the people in USA and Europe who are thriving in it and making their plans for more profit for themselves are hiding it from you. So I'm going to tell you exactly why. So nearly 2/3 of all solar panel equipment is produced in China. I don't know if people know that. It's a bit crazy to hear these things, you know. How did Chinese solar panels reach such a dominant position? There are several factors, you know. China made the big bet on renewable energy, but if you look at the news globally, they don't really put it forward, you know, because China is the competitor of the Western countries. They don't really want to say that it's good that China has made like renewable investments, massive ones in the past. So these years of massive investment in solar in particular, that they made China the world's biggest solar power producer. So this is where you should buy. So they sell half of the global solar modules demand, and this is where it gets interesting, because much of the mega-sized solar plants you have in America or giant floating solar farms in developed countries are actually from China, but you don't know it as a consumer, you know, or as a citizen. You don't really know it. They don't show it to you. Third, you know, for example, if you take the 5 major global sun solar providers that provide high quality and good services for you to go global, most of them are like American or Canadian, okay? You have SunPower, you have Maxion Solar, you have Canadian Solar. Well, I will tell you now, like if you're from the industry, it's gonna make you like think about it more, you know, because they're renowned of having an operating efficiency in the domestic market. For example, they can be based in California, but they manufacture in Mexico, Philippines, and China, you know? And then they complain about Mexico and China and Philippines. So you see the contradiction is there for you to actually confuse you, you know? To make you think that it's their success story in America or in Europe, but it's not. I'm sorry. If you want to do something with solar panel, for example, in Africa, start with China. You have no choice actually globally to make your profit well and have a chance to survive. Even if you look at the Canadian solar, which is the market leader in Canada, for example, the name suggests that it comes from Canada, okay? But ironically, they manufacture in China, and they're very much a Chinese company, literally, you know? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So this is because of the availability of cheap Chinese-made solar products, and they're also still working on decreasing the cost even more. So it's a very interesting product, for example, for China to make a business plan like this and install yourself as a niche market company, you know, source in China, make contact somebody that you can trust, make sure that they use the basic, you know, business treatment or, you know, like courtesy that you usually have in your country, of course. Don't go for like people that are not clear about what they want. Always choose your partner very, very well. Your partner is one of the main requirements if you're going global. You have to trust him before you even start. Also, cultures are different. Chinese want everything quick, okay? They want to distribute quick, and they will help you. A help that you will never get in developed countries. Nobody's going to come there and say, hey, I put you in charge and I give you all the money you need to actually go in Africa and do it. Nobody's going to do that. But with the Chinese businesses for solar, for example, you can develop the conversation first and keep it while you develop your business idea until these people trust you, because they need to trust you as well. Once you see you want something, they will invest in you, they will visit you, and you will go together there and do it. Mm-hmm. Being on the field and proposing it to a government or farmers or anything, you're free to do that. It's called business prospection. And you don't need that much money to do that. You just need a few $1,000s to organize your trip and do it. So what happened, for example, in the solar global market is that the US government accused Chinese solar manufacturers of undercutting the competition in the US market. But wait, we just said that all the solar panels come from China, you know? Mm-hmm. So you have to use that as a small business, because the actions of the global brands betray what they're doing. They betray what they're doing and what's easy for them or not. So just give me a second. Yeah. If you look at the 4 or 5 manufacturers on the list right now, they're Chinese. So if you want to do solar panel, you have to need to design a solution for mini grids, because the government grids are attached to the government network. Each time a consumer, for example, wants to put a solar panel in their house and asks you to install it for them and buys from you, you need an authorization from the government. So that's a problem for this product, you know. So the idea of solar panel, if you want to invest in it, is develop the source more. That's why I talked a lot about the source. Develop a source that you can rely on to distribute with your own product. A product of your own can be designed. You only should think about your design solution for your brand and your business plan once you're there. But the source already is present, you know. A lot of people do that.
Yes, I have an audience questions. Mohammed Shohil Rana, he asked you the question. The coronavirus pandemic has delivered a profound shock to the world economy. How we can be committed to more responsible and inclusion practices as part of our effort to build a recovery in business.
It's quite a big question.
but his specific issue is that how we can be more responsible and we can do more practices on our like for when we make a strategy on recovery, like we want to recover our economy in that particular situation, how we can be more responsible with our job, how we can do more let's say sustainable practices for make it happen.
Well, COVID, you know, is a special moment in history. We all know it. So what's happening is it's coming at a moment where artificial intelligence, new technologies are booming into the media stage, and in terms of investment and speculation on the markets. Okay. What that means for normal people or people on the job market is that they're going to be less jobs. You know, you have to face it. There's going to be less jobs. The Internet of Things, you know, is organized around what you see a lot in social media, to big companies, to actually locate yourself and think about what you can do or change to be more sustainable as a person or as a worker, for example. So a lot of it is going to be related to working from home or working in artificial intelligence for more efficiency in businesses or solutions. All of this is a transfer of skills. A lot of people have to transfer the skills to these new technologies, and a lot of people will lose jobs. So the question for the thank you for the question. I mean, for the viewer that asked this question, because it's a dilemma, you know. The answer is a dilemma because there are, for me, from what I looked, from my insight and my analysis, more people are going to be out of jobs than people that will find jobs on the new industries that are being promoted by Western media and companies, you know, that have profit in them, you know, Amazon, Google. So they're the big ones. They want to cover everyone under that umbrella and keep control. That's their role to survive, you know, as big companies. So you have two ways. You either join the trend as a person and find these new jobs or skills that actually can contribute more sustainably. But I cannot give you a specific example. I mean, to answer would be too large, you know. Mm-hmm. There are so many ways you can do things in a sustainable way in business, or in a more efficient way to cut costs with artificial intelligence. All the economy is going to be based on that. The other half is the people who are going to be left out. So what do you do with these people? Huh? Like, if you are one of these persons, what do you do with it? The only way is to actually convert the business. Convert the business that you already have, the traditional business. Convert your product, or try to go on small businesses that are about online platforms or local businesses, or develop your own brand. Work in products that will work despite the changes of technology, you know. Mm-hmm. That's the only second option you have, basically. Like, you're going to be left out otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have a more specific question on that global point of view. Let's say there are some tension in between USA and China, as well as China, India has some sort of challenges. Even maybe step by step we find a different strategy. But how do you think, how it's going to impact on the global business? in terms of your African point of view, how it creates some impact. And second important thing is that like what type of products you export and what type of product you import in Africa.
Yeah, thank you for this question. Okay, so a good example that I like to take is, for example, Ukraine or Central Europe. You know, with all the different political changes and economic changes, they had to deal with COVID as well. But in their case, what's happening is a struggle between on the like West Side USA influence. They're trying to put a powerhouse in the center of Europe and dump down the markets. For example, Ukraine wants to kill everyone for chicken, you know. Other Central European countries are trying to find ways to produce or source their own tomato instead of buying it from Turkey, for example, you know. So this balance of power between USA and China started becoming very violent with the Huawei story, you know, when Huawei started becoming much more competitive than before and about to topple, you know, Apple or something. That's how the struggle and fight started to happen between them. And a lot of things happened since then. So Chinese want to put the Silk Road project initiative that goes from Europe to China, but they're also planning a railway system.
One Belt, One Road initiative.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, the railroad network that they want to implement in Africa is something similar. So you have two options. You can start to approach the American way, and you know already the style, or you can try to work with Chinese or involve yourself in these networks along those routes and implement your business. Those are going to be some of the largest routes ever. So it's bad, as you said, as a first point, that the US and China are fighting, because now a lot of markets, even the traditional one, are going to be very shaky, you know. So if you enter into them, you're going to be confused. I tried like with tomato at some point when there was a problem with Russia and Turkey, where Russia and Turkey, for example, fought like politically, and they disagreed on things. So the Turkish decided to block the tomato, for example, you know. It's a very essential food product that people consume. Russians don't have access to it because of the weather. And Turkey is the main provider, 475,000 tons a year in 2018, for example, you know. So when I tried to implement that in Africa, I was stopped more by the politics of it than by the ability to do it, you know.
Yes, yes, I understand. There is another question from the audience. This is from Firdaus Rana. She asks you, how can we adopt our business model to reduce cost, both in short term and the long term issues? Like she want to know that how we can reduce the cost of the business. What, like, I know that you are discussing about the Chinese business and the different models, but what is the effective way of reducing the cost?
Okay, the effective way is if you talk about the cost at the beginning of the project, it's like you can already start to work a lot with social media at first to organize yourself with your team and everything. To reduce the costs, you need a very professional and careful study of the product you want to deliver, because the prices can be very, very different from many markets. And you have to understand that if you don't spend that time at the beginning, you're going to make a mistake, and you won't have time to deal with the consequences of that mistake if you're sourcing for your product, and that will cost you a lot. Just a small, how do you say, difference in cents sometimes can make a big difference if you don't look at sourcing and listing of suppliers that provide you. Can make a big difference. And if you don't study the costs of policy, you can be in big trouble, because if policies change and tariffs change for import export for example, that's the most sensitive sector, then it changes everything for you, you know? It can change everything for you and ruin it. So instead of thinking about how to reduce costs, make sure that you don't fall in traps that are related to the costs that will appear later. So make sure you have a cost structure that's detailed, and inform yourself on the markets. Ask people, you know, pretend that you're going to buy something, you know, from people who are more experienced than you. There are so many ways to actually inform yourself apart from the internet. So you should have a team that's small and very compact, you know, and this team should be able to be very versatile, you know. If you defragment your team too much internationally, and the information is not transparent and well organized between these people, you're gonna end up with overlapping delays in conversation, and people being a bit disorganized. And as you know, time is money. So if you waste that time and you engage actually in a project, you're gonna have a lot of problems. I can assure you that. For example, in my personal experience right now, my partner was like appeared and proposed something that I accepted 5-6 days ago, to go global. Has a factory in China, you know. He can provide all the costs and expenses, you know. But what he underestimated, for example, is that the product is highly designed and it contains chemicals, for example. So because he underestimated the design and its cost to make something of quality, he probably gonna have a lot of trouble to actually manage to deliver his products and make a profit fast and reach his audience and save costs. Therefore, you know. Another thing is, if you're going global right now, it's gonna be more likely related to online, and sometimes online is not very clear. So the information you see on these platforms is not always correct. There are always more hidden costs that you're maybe not aware of because you're not experienced enough. So that's why I talked about the role of social media and trying to contact people directly. Even if they don't know you, try to create the conversation and to inform yourself and discover more information about your business, nature, its details, and the kind of cost you can increase in effectiveness. That's one of the first steps. And the second thing to do it is to enlarge your network of business people that you know, and keep in touch with them, because a lot of people change, and business is unpredictable as well in different regions, especially in COVID. It's going to change a lot. A lot of people are going to be frustrated with the business. So keep in touch with your network and try to get to know more people internationally or in your area, and exchange few ideas about what you believe is good for implementing sustainable business. Because sustainable business is about making money. If you're not making money, you're not going to sell solar panels or artificial intelligence. I'm sorry to tell it to you, you know, or move further, you know. You should in the beginning of this interview, I gave you some funny examples on Amazon, how much people make money out of plastic stretching product for the gym, or I don't know, very simple things like toilet paper, you know, they can make $500 million. So one way to cut your costs for the future and get what you want is to actually not be stubborn and think only about your product and say that this is what I want and I want it this way. Never think like that in business, because things are not under your control. When you go out there and implement your idea and make it official, things are not under your control, you know. So what the second solution, apart from networking and the quality of networking and the span of networking, the other solution is what I talked about basically today. Go towards a region, choose a country, you know, inform yourself and try to find a business that's cheap to manufacture or source and organize it online, you know, or go there or yourself. Make it work, you know. Make it work first. Make the budgeting for your project and solidify that budgeting first, so that when you make choices for cost effectiveness or sales that you will do later, you have more budget to actually choose the options that will save you money on the long term, not the options that will save you money on the short term, you know. And I think it would be harder for me to be more specific, because it's a very large topic. Like business is about costs and profits, basically.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Fatah. Actually, you come up with a very good, interesting solution that how we can. You are making business with the Asia Pacific, especially with the China, and how actually African continent are productive, and most importantly, some of the business strategy you are sharing with us, and which is very important for our audience. And most important thing is that many countries, I know they are struggling with the business, they are struggling with the present economic conditions. So hopefully your advice, your guidelines, and this kind of activities can create some global impact, as well as it give them a proper guideline that how they can run business in present situations. So thank you for your effort and thank you for your solutions. So hopefully World Talent Economy Forums in the future, we're going to invite you. We're going to invite you for the group discussions. And most important thing is that I want to invite the talent people like you, those who are contributing for their country, those who are contributing for their economy, and those who are trying to solving different unique problem. You can join with us. You can discuss about with your thoughts, and hopefully World Talent Economy Forums can make a better solution for these pandemic situations, and we can create a better world. So thank you, Mr. Fatah. Thank you for your services and for your discussions. And most important thing is that hopefully we can make a better ecosystem together.
Yes, thank you very much for this amazing interview with you. And I like what you say at the end. You know, we should think about a better future together. And I think World Talent Forum, you know, it's a good way of doing it, bringing very different people in a unique way. Because if you try to do it yourself with your own network, it doesn't work like this. What we're doing now, you know. So it can. I hope it brings for us together, you know, interesting ideas that we may one day implement together. It could be in Latin America or Africa. I don't have a problem with that. Usually, I go anywhere, you know. I don't care. But if we find a group that we can work on, I'm in. You know, I could be in most likely in the future with you guys. You know. So thank you very much for inviting me here. So. It was fun and interesting to share about this with you, Mr. Sharif,
Thank you.
With the audience.
And share World Talent Economy Forums in Algeria with your economy and with your peoples. So we want to know more about Africa. We want to know more. This week, actually, I'm designing something based on the African continent. Even we have a guest from South Africa. We have a guest from even Nigeria. So we love different cultural people. We respect different cultural people, and we will make a better community and better world. Thank you, Mr. Fatah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.